Hello everybody and welcome to Retro Rides podcast, episode 5. With me today as usual, Rich Fowler in the co-driver's chair. How are you, Rich?
Fantastic today, Cam. Can't believe we're already up to episode 5. Keen to get into it and talk classic and performance vehicles.
Some funny stuff out there this week and we've got a lot to talk about. We've got a great interview with Tim Possingham, the founder of the Adelaide Motorsport Festival coming up, and then of course we've got our auction results as well and some real surprises in there, particularly for Brock fans this week, so stay tuned for that. But first of all, mate, some unusual stuff in the wacky world of the web out there. We've got a little Fiat Coupe for $33,000. What do you make of this little special?
Yes, well, this is certainly a vehicle only a mother could love. It's not pretty, but it's unique and it's got some Fiat style. It's a limited edition.
Limited edition, 20 valves or something, was it 20 valve?
You've got something to talk about, I guess, when you're with your mates at the pub. It's good 20 valves, but other than that, it's not a pretty car.
Not a pretty car, 33 grand, we'll see what happens there. Another one that came across my eye this week was probably forgotten for some of us, was the Alan Moffat high output EB Falcon V8. Well, and they made a 6-cylinder of this car too, I believe. Please don't jump down my throat if that's not exactly correct. But the high output Moffat Falcon, the EB.
Well, yeah, obviously Moffat, a legend. Great to remember all these little tuner specials and deals that were done, but that's actually a pretty car. A nice EB, good spec.
Yeah, big wing on the back. It had a couple of little EB GT finishes, but it was put together, had his signature on there, Recaro seats, or Paratus seating.
And a nice supercharger.
Supercharger in the 4-litre 6 or the 5-litre V8, which I think was a Vortec supercharger. Out of the US.
Yeah, pretty good spec, fun car for a...
And the V8 had a top speed of 240 odd kilometres an hour or 150 miles an hour in the old money, and 235 kilowatts of power, which I guess in the early 90s was a pretty healthy...
Yeah, it's a good number. And what's he sniffing around for?
I saw one this week for $43,000, so 5-speed manual car, very nice car.
Arguably a better buy than one we've seen on car sales from Holden, Cameron.
Well, we do. We have an ambitious sale, ladies and gentlemen, on car sales with a Brock-driven Commodore, and I will say driven with emphasis because...
It's driven to the shops.
It was driven to the shops and back to get some milk. Brocky apparently loved his dairy.
Yeah. But, so what are these things worth normally? A
VX Commodore S-Pack 6-cylinder, normally I would say somewhere around $5 or $6 grand for a good one. This gentleman is a little ambitious, I think, in the pricing, asking $1.5 million.
1.5. I'd be some fun phone calls to
be had. Yeah, some fun phone calls.
To him, I imagine.
On car sales. And
anyway, that's these where getting to the top of the listing, but shows also car sales pricing. Is set by the vendor, so not a great indication of what the real value or the end sale price may be.
Correct. I mean, I think if they allow you to stick a car in there at 1.5 million, it's a bit questionable for a Commodore S-Pack. The story with that car, I believe, was that it was bought or given to Brock so that his son could drive it. The son has signed a letter of authenticity to say that him and his father were the only ones that have driven the car. But still, as we'll see later on, there's some Brock cars that have sold for significantly less money with some pretty solid race history. So, some ambitious pricing there. I think that's probably worth about 15 grand or 20 grand, but that's
tops.
That's where my head's at. Let's go to the news. Okay, a bit of controversy from the city of Casey in Victoria, which I believe is in the outskirts of Melbourne, 400,000 odd residents. It's been in the news for a while that the city of Casey have introduced I can't believe we're having this conversation, but we are in Australia in this day and age. The city of Casey have introduced a permit if you are to work on your vehicle. If you have a unregistered vehicle, you need a permit to do an oil change, do any kind of work on the car. You're only allowed to have the car on site, I think, for 90 days. And they've now impounded a resident's cars, I believe, this week. He came home to a low loader sitting in the backyard loading up some of his vehicles with a guy from council saying the paperwork will be in the mail. So it seems...
It's crazy times out there, Cameron. I get it from one point of view. I mean, there's nothing worse than driving down the street and old mate's got 4 old unregistered things that he's never touched before on there, and you kind of don't want to see that, and I'm sure anywhere where you live, but I think people should retain the right to be able to change the oil in their cars and have a hobby and do a resto and clean their cars and fix things up and do things. So obviously,
there's no way in hell I would have ever apply for a permit for something like that. So come and arrest me now, officer.
You're a bad man.
But, I'm an anarchist.
Yeah.
But that's the.
Don't take my Castrol.
It's really crazy. Look, there's people out there, I guess, saying that council had given him written warnings and some of the cars may or may not have been on his property. So look, there's a lot of conjecture, but at the end of the day, it seems like the city of Casey is going insane and waging war against us car collectors and car lovers, which we don't like.
Don't like that.
Switching over to the website now, the Retro Rides website. This week, there's some interesting stuff going on. We've got Maserati with a carbon-bodied resto mod. Yes,
well, it's a company out of Italy, another little resto shop, and this time they're doing up the Maserati Shamal, which was a pretty cool-looking thing, two-door coupe. They've got a carbon fibre kit on it and asking some extraordinary amount of money.
Around $900,000.
$900,000.
Yeah, $900,000. Crazy money.
Well, I guess they won't need to sell too many, hopefully, or build too many with that sort of price tag. But every week we see a new resto mod, and there are some cool ones out there.
It's a really cool looking car. It's a little 3-litre turbo, I think. 0 to 100 about 5 seconds. But yeah, incredibly expensive. I'm sure they're planning on not making a lot of them.
And speaking of not a lot of them, a unicorn from back in the day.
The Surfaroo.
The Ford Surfaroo.
I'd never heard of a Surfaroo.
Our resident journo, Cliff Chambers, has written a fantastic piece on what was a cover car on Wheels magazine back in the day in 1970. Another salute to our beach culture. It was a one-off and carried a couple of surfboards. What do you make of that?
Well, it's a pretty cool looking thing, actually. I'd love to have a Surfaroo in my garage. Big rear wing, carry the longboard. I think, was it an XY Falcon
XW?
XW Falcon Ute.
XW, and it would go nicely with a Sandman, make a nice set, wouldn't it? Because then you could have a surf and then have a little nap in the afternoon.
So look, if you're interested in that, check out the story over at Retro Rides. It's a really cool car and a cool bit of Australian automotive history there.
Speaking of cool cars, Cam.
Triumph Stag. Another great story on the site this week, a buyer's guide. For those of you who don't know, the last episode of the Grand Tour, James May drove a Stag, and they've become a bit of having a little resurgence in the last few months. Yeah, so James obviously drove the car in their final episode, and everyone's fallen back in love with the Stag again. They always sounded good. They were a good sounding car, but my understanding, and I was a bit of a young fella when back in the day a relative had one, but things would fall off them at a regular place and they would often leave you on the side of the road.
I think that's the part of joy of collecting most British cars of
I think so.
Of that era. But they've sort of stood the test of time. They do look cool and they're having a renaissance. So if you're looking to buy one, go and check it out on the site.
I'm not sure, is that the Rover V8? Is that the little 3500?
Yeah, still 3.5 litre V8. Yeah, sounded good. Open top on some of them, pretty cool.
And the Mini has scaled great heights, I believe.
Yes, a little bit of a funny story this week on the world's highest Mini. An adventurer called Ben Coombs drove one up the side of a volcano in Chile and has claimed that title. 1,600 kilometre trip, and for a short period of time, the Mini's the highest car in the world. So a bit of a fun piece to read about there. Well, what a story that is. Fantastic. Anyway, right now, we're excited to have Tim Possingham, the founder of the Adelaide Motorsport Festival, on the show. This is the biggest and best festival of its kind in Australia. Classic cars, race cars, some of the biggest names in the automotive world. Let's hear what Tim's got to say. This has become a monumental, huge event, Tim. What can you tell us about it and the passion as to why you started this event?
Thanks so much, Cam and Rich. I really appreciate the offer to be here today. In sort of 2014, it was the Sporting Car Club of South Australia that approached me about developing some other events. And they had a few ideas about some bits and pieces, and I had some of my own. And we decided we'd try to use part of the Adelaide 500 track. It was a 2-day event. There was a hill climb on the Saturday and the sprint on the Sunday, and we had 1,800 people at the event. And back then it was owned by the Sporting Car Club.
Oh, good stuff. That's really great to hear, Tim, all that history. And so, who was the premier that really helped set you off on this path in this second run?
This is Peter Malinauskas and the Labor government that we have in power today. The previous government actually did cut our funding in 2019.
To that point, Tim, what sort of audience numbers or what's the attendance? How many people are you getting there over the 2 days?
Yeah, well, we're at 50,000 people that come to the event. So the event's got some peripheral events that are attached to it. One being the Goodger Street Party and the peak hour of power that a lot of people have seen, because that's when we run 30 cars, Formula One cars and Le Mans cars and a suite of other things through the city at night.
Stuff. And Tim, you've got some incredible cars and incredible drivers, multi-million-dollar machinery coming over. How do you convince the teams and drivers and car owners to bring their incredible equipment out here?
Well, there's a variety of means. The event's starting to get to the point now where they're even buying cars to bring to the event. But we do attempt to try to exceed expectations every year.
And what are some of the highlights we can expect this year?
We've got cars like, we just announced the Bugatti Bolide the other day, and so that's a circa $10 million car. It's one of 4 that exist in the world right at the moment that are in customers' hands. So Bugatti started to release these cars to customers only a few months ago. There's only going to be 40 built, and we've got one of 4 in the world here. So I think that's going to appeal to a lot of people. We find that a lot of the younger people gravitate towards things like these exotics, and yet you've got this other segment, people that are sort of circa my age and probably your age, that are into Adelaide era Formula One cars. So we're talking 1980 to 1995.
And
Alan Jones is going to be there, I believe.
Yes, Alan Jones, Stefan Johansson, Thierry Boots and Damon Hill, some other motorbike riders, Troy Corser, Christopher Mueller, Cam Donald. There's a lot of Group A drivers, you've got Greg Murphys and Andrew Madecki and Stephen Richards. And there's a whole suite of people. But we also have a thing here called the Grand Marquee, where they get to, where they're interviewed on stage. It's a free space, so anyone that comes into the event can go into the Grand Marquee and see a session that could be someone like Vern Chupin talking about winning Le Mans or driving Porsche 962s or whatever it is. And then there'll be Stephanie Hansen and Thierry Boutsen talking about racing at the first Adelaide Grand Prix, in another session. So, there's a lot on offer. It really is a smorgasbord for the motorsport fan in respect to the, some 260 different cars on track, hundreds on display, and then the exhaustive list of celebrities.
And who's the wildest character that you've had at the show, or is due at the show this year? Is Valtteri Bottas with you this year?
Oh, Valtteri's coming. Valtteri's
he's pretty wild, isn't he? With his mullet
not.
And his no.
I wouldn't describe him as wild. He is cool, calm, and collected. Like, he does do some interesting, humorous videos, but he's a really cool, calm, and collected guy. And he's the type of guy that you can say to him, like when he drove an Alfa Romeo that's an ex-Alan Jones.
That's right, the Ignis car.
Last year. And we said to him, look, Valtteri, your session's coming up. It's raining. You're on slicks. Just, are you okay with that? It's not, it's not your car. You're not familiar with it. And he just goes, should be okay. Should be okay. He's just, everything's, that's fine. This is fine. Nothing is a problem for him. He is cool, calm, and collected. He's great to have around. So he's not a wild man. I mean, in the past, I would have to say Troy Bayliss, who's a former World Superbike champion.
Yeah,
Troy,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I love Troy, but he's a bit uncontrollable. He probably would find, I don't think I'm speaking outside of school. You can say there, Troy, don't do wheel stands, don't do burnout, don't do this, don't do that. And, that just goes out the window immediately.
Yeah, puts a helmet on and he becomes a whole new person. And the future of the event, Tim, you got it locked in for the next few years, and there's obviously a lot of new technology. Tell us about the sort of future side of it, and what we can look forward to this year and in the years to come.
I don't think we're going to do anything extraordinarily different in the future. We'll just keep building on what people love, that is the content, fresh content. But at the same time, they also like to come to the event and go, great, I saw that last year and it's back again, or I saw that person last year and he's back or she's back again, in respect to addressing where the motoring industry is going, because of course our event isn't just about race cars. We do some things like we run some electric vehicles on track, usually things like we ran an electric World Rally Championship car a couple of years ago. We ran a motorbike on completely synthetic fuel last year that's made literally from thin air and water from a company called Zero Petroleum from the UK. So we'll continue to explore what's happening and just keep enhancing everything that we know people love and give them more of what they love.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it, folks. That's March 8 and 9 in Adelaide. If you haven't got your tickets, you're running out of time, you need to get them. Get yourselves down there. We're excited, we're pumped. We look forward to seeing you, Tim, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure.
I'm really looking forward to that, Rich. That'll be fantastic, the Adelaide Motorsport Festival. And without further ado, folks, you know what time it is. It's hammer time.
Hammer time.
All right, folks. Well, some terrific results this week from around the world in the auction space. A Ferrari 250 LM through RM Sotheby's sold for a hefty 53 million Australian dollars. Kicked off at 14 million euros or 23 million AUD. And yeah, finally sold for 53, as I just said. Rich, what can you tell us about this car? 1965, I believe.
Just another phenomenal car. Obviously, this is the last car to win Le Mans in 1965 for Ferrari up until last year. And obviously the car that Henry Ford so desperately wanted to beat, building the GT40, which started winning the year after. This car was driven by Maston Gregory and the late Jochen Rindt. One of only 32 examples, and this also came out of the Indy Museum, the same as the Merc from last week, and just shows that at that very, very top end of the market, the prices just still keep climbing. 53 million Aussie. What can you say?
RM Sotheby's seem to have a pretty solid handle on this end of the market.
Yeah, they always have the super high end. Yeah. You take your car to Sotheby's, don't you?
I don't know. I don't have one, but I do watch. These auctions, and I'm blown away by these prices. It's another world. Back to home and something a little bit more closer to reality. Brock's 4x4 Holden Rodeo, $100,000. What can you tell us about this one?
Yeah, an interesting collector's piece. Obviously anything Brock, other than cars that he drives to the shops, have great value. This was a 2004 Australian Safari car, built by the Holden racing team of the time, Holden Rally team under Todd Kelly.
And that had an LS motor in it?
Yeah, it had an LS1, big V8 in it, and Paul Wheel Racing was also involved in that. Fantastic vehicle, Brock Heritage, went for 100 grand on the nose on collection.
I actually think that's a fantastic buy. If you're into your Brock stuff and your Australian motoring heritage, I mean, where else are you going to buy a Brock raced car or vehicle for $100,000?
No, that's right, and something that you can burn around on the farm and have a good time on. So
cool as hell. In the world of JDM, we've got a Honda S2000, a low kilometre car.
Yeah, this car, 23,000 kilometres, black. Shows again that the JDM market for good cars is continuing to climb. Collectors love them. Famous for having revving to 10,000 RPM and being a really pretty car. $75,000 on collecting.
Whew. I would have thought that's really solid money for an S2000.
Pretty big money.
Yeah. It's a weird market out there, that's for sure. What have we got next? The 348 GTS.
Yes. Again, I'm highlighting this one because it's another, collecting cars does a great job at these sort of high, $150,000 to $200,000 Ferraris. This car, again, 23,000 Ks. I think it was a Hong Kong car, but, immaculate and pretty good price for an older machine.
And another one from collecting cars, Rich, the Triumph TR5, a gorgeous red car, wire wheels, white walls, a very lovely, slick looking thing.
Yeah, very pretty car. Again, solid money, $85,000. This part of the market's been a little bit flat. I think these, mid 70s, early 80s British stuff has taken a bit of a punishing. But just again, we say it every time, beautifully kept. car. Anyone would be happy to own that thing. Wire wheels, as you said, with some white walls. A truly nice bit of nostalgia.
And a little bit closer to home, Rich, on Trading Garage, the Charger. Hey Charger.
Hey Charger. Yes, another of the Australian classics from the 70s, 1972 model. This one's a bit of a hot rod though, Cam.
It is, mate, a stonking big 408 cubic inch, 6.7 litre in the new money motor dropped into this car, made it to a 3-speed auto, just a weapon in pepper grey. I personally think it looks fantastic. It's obviously not an original car, but it's a very, very high-end piece of work.
Yeah, I think you have a lot of fun in that thing, and
totally.
it's nice paint job. You could jump in that and just go and enjoy it.
Look, thanks very much, everyone. That's been a great show. Thanks, Rich.
Thanks, Cam.
We'll be back again next week. Please like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you soon.